All right, how's it going? Today I've got Ashlee Berghoff, who's going to talk about her experience with us doing some coaching. Ashlee, thank you for joining. And could you please just share a bit about who you are, where you live, the business you run, the children you raise, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So my name's Ashlee Berghoff. I live outside of Denver, Colorado. So about 30 minutes from downtown Denver, where Brian's at, which is really fun. Sorry, my camera just got blurry. Let's try to fix that. Um, and I run a business that's built to free up high ticket marketers and early stage agency owners who are ready to scale. So we do all the heavy lifting to pull their systems out of their head and install those systems in the mind of someone who can run things for them so they can actually focus on what they want to do so they can grow. So that's what we do. I started the business back in 2017. So we're about to hit our 6th anniversary, which is wild.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I missed. Are there any more questions I haven't answered yet?
And just also you're just running a
Oh, yeah.
business while a mom.
Yes. So I started my business about a year and a half before I had my first child, and now I have two. So over the course of the last 6 years, I've kind of dropped from 50 hours to 30 to the 20 I'm at now.
Yep.
So I can kind of be with my kids most of the day and work in very constrained spaces. And it's been really meaningful to have the chance to do that.
Sweet. Yeah. And we actually met because before you started doing what you're doing now, which is amazing work, you were doing more like a kind of personal assistant and helping people get their personal assistants and all that figured out. That's how we met. You helped me. You did awesome things for my business and my freelance career. And then you kind of went up to higher levels, helping people with like even larger businesses kind of start to free themselves up from it. So it's awesome work. If you need help with that, Ashlee over at A Squared is fantastic. So the more you learn from her, the better. And let's just get going on. What was it? What was going on in your life and your business that made you initially think like, okay, maybe I could use some coaching here. I know you've got a business coach who's great, like a mentor. So a lot of the business stuff is there. So what made you start to look for this kind of coaching?
Yeah. One of the things I did not at all expect when I started my business is how intense the entrepreneurship experience is from a personal development and mindset perspective. I just didn't expect that. I knew it would be a big learning curve for skills, learning to do new things I'd never done before, all of those things. But what I've experienced myself and have seen in everyone I know in this space is that so much of the growth and change is happening on the personal side. And so much of your success as an entrepreneur and your sense of feeling like a success is tied to how you think about pretty foundational stuff, right? Your mindset about money, who you are, how to structure your life in a way that's sustainable, how, what success even means to you, like all of those sorts of things. And so I was kind of hitting a point after multiple years of kind of being at the cusp of a lot of growth and being ready for that, but also not wanting some kind of mindset hangups and head trash issues that I've been dealing with this whole time to stymie that and or to keep me from enjoying the growth that we're experiencing because, I'm thinking of success in an impossible way or those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's such a great point. I like the starting your own business, building your own business just forces you to confront so much of the mindset, personal stuff. That's like, oh, like you thought you just had to learn traffic and sales or whatever.
Right.
And it's like, nah, there's a million more things that are now piling on to start like sorting out. Cool. So yeah, was there anything like specific, like a specific problem or like a specific moment when you're like, okay, like I need some help with this. I need to get this thing handled?
A really great question. I'm trying to remember if that was kind of a light bulb moment or not. Um, I think it was one of those things where I've been kind of tapping at the edges of it for a long time, reading things, going to things, kind of catching little pieces of mindset knowledge along the way, learning stuff. And I think kind of the the thing that tipped me over into, now is the time to really consider this is, like you mentioned, I have a strategic coach, a business coach, and I realized that a lot of the time we were focusing on was working through these things with me. And I wanted to start not siloing things, but focusing things, where the time I was spending with him was really focused on strategy, vision, where are we going? How are we thinking about profitability? How are we thinking about our marketing engine, right? Those sorts of things. And then kind of creating a protected space where I didn't feel like I was wasting time by then focusing on how I think about myself, how I think about money, what's going on with the scarcity mindset, what's going on with these kinds of inabilities to see myself as winning in these places, right? Like those sorts of things, creating a protected container for that, still in the context of my business. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes so much more sense. Like, yeah, you've got the great business strategy person, and it's like, oh, I want to actually be able to use you for that, but I'm so wrapped up in this other muck that we can't do that.
Right.
Yeah, that's a great point. And then, so what led you to end up what made you choose to work with me over, all the other mindset coaches or life coaches or all the other, like, therapy or whatever else, like, all these great things, but why'd you end up being like, let's try Brian out?
Yeah. I think there were a couple pieces. One, I already knew and trusted you from us working together in reverse, right? Where you were one of my clients. And, we also know some of the same people who have worked with you and had a really great experience. So I had heard about that and kind of seen that play out for Angie Coley, for instance. She had talked to me a little bit about her experience. And so, it might have been wise, I guess, for me to make a spreadsheet of all the main mindset coaches that I know and make some kind of strategic decision. It wasn't like that. It was more like, hey, Brian's doing this. I trust him. I like the way he shows up. I've heard good things. Let's talk about it. And then it felt like a good thing to do. Yeah.
Sweet. So what were some of the biggest lessons or shifts that you got from the coaching?
Yeah. And I did not go back over my notes before this call. So this is completely non-coached stuff. This is kind of what's in my head.
This is whatever you can remember from 3 months ago or whatever it was.
Yeah, it's been a couple months. So I guess we're finding out for real what really kind of stuck. I think the biggest things for me were kind of realizing that I was in some ways sabotaging myself, because the idea of bringing on new clients was hard and scary and made me feel like I was in this person's debt from day one, and that I was needing to make up that debt to get to a point where they were happy to have bought from me and given me money, right? The idea of them giving me money was like, oh, now I'm in their debt. Now we are in the red and we need to get out of the red together. And so there was kind of part of me that, the energy I had in sales calls was, after they said no, I started enjoying the call so much more because I could kind of relax. And there was almost a sense of relief, even though I want to grow this business and I believe in what we do. And so I think that was a really helpful thing to shift away from, I'm in this person's debt, towards, we've now unlocked something. We've opened a door. This money has given us that. Now let's see what we can do with it. And I believe that you're going to be far better off having done this, right? So that was really helpful in just transitioning my energy to be able to handle, I think we have like 11 or 12 clients right now. So, having that kind of level of responsibility on me would have felt heavier. It's still not like, oh, I don't care. I very much do, but it would have felt much heavier to feel like, wow, I'm in all these people's debt. They're all one day away from being upset, this kind of heavy weight that I was putting on it, and we're wanting to grow quite a bit. So that was a big shift for me.
That self-sabotage of realizing this little part of you that doesn't actually want clients. And then once you can get that handled, then you've got space to actually start opening up and receiving and working with clients.
Right.
And like how stressful would it be now? Because you have 12 clients now. How many did you have like before, like 2 months or so ago?
Probably 5 to 7, something like that.
Yeah,
we were kind of at a lower volume for a good long time. And I think, thinking about receiving and thinking about, the exchange of giving and receiving and all of that in the context of entrepreneurship was really important too. And,
Yeah. To be receiving, and then for when you're working with someone, then it becomes like, oh, I'm excited for us to do this thing together, versus like, I'm in your debt and I'm being crushed by this feeling of obligation to you times
right,
12 for every client. Like
right,
that is a heavy, burdensome, rough way to run your business from.
right.
Which again, like, yeah, that's that can totally muck up the best strategies and all that stuff going. But when you've got these mindset things that make you repel clients and then running your business miserable and draining,
Mhm.
it's a rough road.
Right.
Cool. So yeah, I love that one. And it also reminded me of something else. Oh, right, yeah. So you've also, another thing that we talked about was like, wanting to do a great job for your clients, and it getting to the point where that also like wasn't really defined, and it just always
Mhm.
kind of felt like no matter what, like it wasn't good enough, and then there was no like agreement on like what a good job is. So
Mhm.
you're kind of in this world of wanting to do your best and never knowing what that is or look like or what was good. Can you talk a bit more about that, and how, if that changed or shifted at all?
Yeah, yeah, that was a huge one. Where I had kind of defined a successful client relationship as only that person being like, this is the best thing I've ever done in my entire life. This completely transformed my existence. Wow,
I saw
I'm just blown
God.
away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which those are great. Obviously, we want some of them, but that can't be everyone. It just can't. And so I had a lot of clients who were like, yeah, this was good. This helped me. And I was like, well, I failed. This was not enough. Like they weren't just completely, becoming evangelists screaming about me from the rooftops because their experience was so amazing. And so it was helpful to kind of acknowledge that that was happening, because sometimes you don't, when you look at something straight, it's like, oh, that doesn't make sense, right? Obviously, we want all of our customers to be happy with their experience. We want all of them to get what they came in to get. But people have different personalities. People have different ways of seeing how things fit in, and not everyone's going to be super effusive about their experience and all of those things. And kind of remembering too, even the biggest name entrepreneurs in the world, they're going to share those 1, 2, 3 highly transformational stories. Those people in their orbit who have those kinds of like, wow, we quadrupled the size of their business in a month or whatever.
Yeah.
But they have a whole lot of people back behind who had much more moderate results. And that's the nature of work, right? That's the nature of the work that we do together. And so I think it was just helpful to calibrate that to a place of, we always want to get better. We always want to take great care of our clients. But if we see everything short of this mind blown moment as a failure, we'll never feel great. And then also we'll kind of port that over to the client where they're like, wow, you think this wasn't good enough. Maybe you're right. Like, let me think
Yeah.
about
Like
that.
they're happy with it. And then they catch
Mhm.
your energy of being like, it's a disappointment. Like,
Yeah.
I guess this wasn't great.
Yeah. Like I thought I was happy with it, but now you're telling me like maybe I have reasons to not be. I don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was really helpful.
Just imagine like a chef like giving you this like great burger or something at a restaurant, being like, yeah, I'm sorry, it was the best I could. And it's like, but this was really good. Like, am I
You're like, why are
wrong,
you
Jeff, for
apologizing to
liking
me right
this?
now? I'm really confused. Like, was there secretly a hair in it and you didn't tell me? Like, I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of like that.
Cool.
Mhm.
So, and what's the impact of that, of kind of like reframing like what success looks like, what your kind of obligations are, what you bring to the table, been the impact in terms of like your day-to-day work and stress and client relationships versus before, when nothing you did was good enough unless they went on top of a mountain and screamed your name.
Yeah, I think, all of this is kind of intangible, right? So you kind of are unnodding things, and it's not always this linear thing, but I have definitely noticed like things feeling lighter and my client experiences feeling more positive.
Sweet.
Um, where also I feel more freedom to be like, I'm really excited about this. Look how cool this is,
Yeah.
instead of kind of being in more of this fear mode, for either of the things that we've talked about of like, have I paid back my debt to you? Is this okay? Is this good enough?
Yeah.
More like, hey, I'm excited what we're doing. I'm excited how far we've come, and let's celebrate that together. And I'm actually feeling that, and trying to kind of build that into the team too, because now I have a team of 3 people that I'm leading, and I want to make sure that the culture I'm creating is not this one of like, we better not screw up, and more of let's celebrate what we're doing together,
Yeah. Yeah, like you being more free and light and open, and that's gonna, yeah, make a more positive relationship. It's gonna help with like creativity and thinking and problem solving because you're not in that fear-based place where kind of fear is in
Mhm.
charge and shutting things down. And then that ripple effect where it's not just you now, that's how the team operates. And yeah, so
Mhm.
important for that things to, start with the leader, because if you're not showing up that way yourself, then and you expect
Right.
your team to.
Right. Right.
Cool.
Exactly.
So I've got a list of a couple things I wanted to touch on as well.
Okay.
But first, I wanted to leave it open for any more things that stuck out for you, for like major like sticking points that kind of got resolved, or just like issues you had before that got better from coaching.
Yeah. One of the things that also I come back to often is the idea of giving more impactfully in a narrower scope.
Yeah.
So, during the course of our coaching together, I had kind of made the decision, I need to stop doing virtual coffees, right? I work 20 hours a week. It's a very constrained space. And I was spending 15 hours a week on calls, which was not sustainable. Like, it wasn't going to work.
And these are
And so,
virtual coffees with just like people just reach out from you out of nowhere and you're like, hey, you want
yes,
to connect? And you're like, well, I don't want to say no because that's mean and rude. So of course I'll get on a call with you, stranger.
right, exactly. So these were a lot of connection calls with complete strangers, no real agenda, just like, hey, let's meet, let's get to know each other. Sometimes they're great, sometimes we don't click, you never know. You're just kind of rolling in with another human being and spending 30 minutes together, right? And it's in the spaces that I'm in, there's kind of this shared understanding of like networking is the best and only like ethical way to market. So why would you say no to virtual coffees? Also, I had this sense of like saying, no, I don't do those was selfish, was kind of calculating in a really negative way, like, oh, I don't know what's in it for me, so I'm not going to show up. Like that sort of attitude is how I was kind of framing it in my head. And so it felt entitled, selfish, very self-focused and self-centered. And so it was a process of really looking at, okay, how do I become more strategic? Um, how do I recognize kind of the constraints I need to put on my time? Because all of us have that, right? Like all of us could dedicate our lives to about 50 million different causes and we can't do it, right? So we have to narrow. And how do I think about my work in the sense of, okay, I am structuring my work this way so I can pour a lot into giving to my kids and my family. I'm structuring my work this way so I can pour a lot into making this a healthy company that's supporting 3 other people in addition to myself. And how do I make sure that when people I can truly, genuinely help in a meaningful way show up, I have the space to do that for them, right? So I still do spend significant time. If someone's wanting to start a business like mine or something and they're curious my story, I'll make a video to share with them what I've experienced and how I got here, and hopefully that will be helpful for them in a really meaningful way, right? But again, it's a video, not a call, right? So finding ways to give to people in a way that's actually meaningful and impactful,
Mm,
um, and being willing to then say no to everything else and recognizing that, yes, this is me being strategic. This is me being wise. This isn't me being selfish, entitled. Um, and that it's important for me as the CEO of a company to be calculating, to say, okay, is there a real meaningful purpose to this? If not, I can't do it. I don't have the
yeah.
capacity. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Of like at first calculating seeming like such a bad word, but it's like no, you kind of actually you can't just be at everyone else's whim and on
Right.
everyone else's agenda. You've got like what's important for you and your family and your company to consider. And
Right.
hey, let's make that a priority because that person on LinkedIn certainly is not making, your time with your kids a priority.
Right. Well, and it wasn't really helping them that much. That was the other thing to
Yeah,
kind of realize
yeah.
too. Like, it's not like I'm really benefiting them a whole lot. I'm filling up their calendar as well. And I've seen a lot of my clients' calendars. It's a big deal across the
Yeah,
board,
yeah. So you're actually like
So,
doing more of a service by saying no in some of these circumstances.
yeah, unless there's something like, hey, we've talked back and forth on LinkedIn for a while. We have something specific to explore together. Yeah, let's get on a
Yeah.
call. We have a reason,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. That's a
Yeah.
big shift from like, yeah, well, oh, but the industry says to do this. And I don't want to be this type of person, to really getting clear on like, no, like who, yeah, how do you want to show up? What is more meaningful for you?
Right.
What's more important for you? And then, structuring your day and how you respond based on that versus based on how you're like, maybe afraid to be, or how, everyone else says that you need to be.
Right.
Yeah, that's pretty
Right.
massive shift in how to live your life and run a
Yeah.
business.
Yeah. There've been like 2 or 3 times when I've kind of gone back, and every time I'm like, nope, like this is clearly the right choice. And yeah, no regrets.
Yeah. And what about, I know one thing, this is like one of our first calls. You came in and you had uh you had some very big goals for your business. It was like,
Mhm.
you're working 20 hours a week, that's your limit. And you can share what your growth goals were. And then yeah, can you, like, basically you had some very big expectations that we kind of then talked about, and like the expectations
Mm.
were just like adding more kind of stress and beating yourself up and leading to burnout and all this stuff. So can you just talk a little about that and like just the expectations of yourself in the business and how that shifted?
Yeah. Yeah. That's been kind of an ongoing
Mm,
process of really, because it goes pretty deep.
yeah.
I've had counselors over the years be like, what is it with these expectations for yourself? Like, these are crazy. Um, and then, I'm actually doing work with a counselor, like somatic work, deep body work on some
Oh,
of that
cool.
stuff around different parts of myself, and this part of myself being very defensive because I tend to attack it.
Mm,
Like the part of me that's driven and has these expectations. So it's this constant balancing act and learning experience. But one of the big things I think for me that was really helpful about us addressing that right off the bat was kind of realizing like, wait, I think at the time I wanted to like triple the size of my business from what I'd done for the past 3 years, because I kind of stayed at this one revenue spot for the past 3 years. Wanted to triple that. Um, Wanted to do all these things, hire these people in a pretty short period of time. And like you said, with pretty significant time restraints. And I had my reasons why. I wanted to get us a cash reserve in the business. I want to kind of get to work optional status. Like I had these reasons, but then when we were looking at it, it's like those reasons can be achieved without tripling the size of the business.
yeah.
Like we can calibrate that down and still achieve those goals, right? Into something that's more sustainable, that's not going to be nearly as revolutionary or create so much like angst and churn and change, because we completely everything is drastically different than it was not
Yeah.
that long ago. um and this is going to give us actually a chance to win and to move forward. And what's kind of interesting is we are in a place now where we'll probably double this year compared to last year.
Yeah.
And we're looking going into 2024 at probably doubling again. So we are growing a lot, and there will be a lot of change. But I think it was helpful to kind of bring down the bar of like, okay, what do I really need? Like, what's the deal with this number? Where did it come from? And do a little bit of work too around, I came out of a very expensive elite MBA program as I was starting this business.
Yeah.
And I had this standard when I started the business that I needed to replace that income quickly. And I did not
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
Right. Still haven't done it. But that wasn't the reason why I started the business. I started the business to be able to pursue a career that was meaningful to me and that I could flex around the needs of my family as we had children and all of that. And I have done that.
Yeah.
So the purpose that I started the business to achieve is there, but I also felt like a failure because I hadn't achieved this other numerical goal that was not realistic looking back, right? Because I didn't understand the numbers. I was like, oh, okay, I can make 6 figures. And it's like, well, 6-figure revenue does not turn into 6-figure salary, right? Like that
Yeah.
is not the same thing. So learning to kind of take my, hard knocks, learn those things, but also kind of recognize like, all right, what do I really need at a deep level for this business to do for me? And oh, look, it's doing that
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
now. Right. I can still have goals, but I don't need to feel like a failure if we don't hit some of these other things.
What
Right.
impact does that have of realizing like, oh, the major thing you set out to do, you're actually doing? And then this part that, we get so hung up on these like somewhat arbitrary income numbers. And then we do
Mhm.
the math and often realize like maybe it's not even that important.
Right.
And, or like, you don't even like need that level. And
Right.
again, like, yeah, you actually already achieved the most important part and you weren't giving yourself credit for that because you're just so focused on like, well, I got to hit that part, then I can feel
Right.
good.
Right.
So yeah, what impact does that have of kind of like, you know, getting realistic with your numbers and understanding, oh, I've already done the most important part here.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it just makes it feel like, we're in the good times right now. Cause I feel,
Uh-huh.
I remember I was talking to a client and it stuck in my head. It was Chris, who we both know. And I quoted it in my book because it was so insightful. He's like, I had this idea in my head that 200K was, or I think it was 20K months. He's like, when I hit that, I fully expected to like fall to my knees, like tears falling down my face. Like I did it. I finally, and he's like, then I got there and it was just another day. I moved on to the next thing. Now it was, oh, now we got to hit 1 million now,
Yeah.
and we do that to ourselves. We kind of move the finish line right before we
Yeah.
reach it. So then when we cross it, it's not a win anymore because the win's over there now.
Yep.
Right. And so it was just I've always had that like mental image in my head because we do expect that. Like some of these like pinnacle moments, and entrepreneurship is just so much more of a roller coaster than that. We're kind of always in the middle, always feeling like we're in the middle. And so
Yeah.
like learning to enjoy this right here. Like I'm going to look back at this year and have fond memories of it, even if we haven't hit X, Y, and Z goals, right? Because
Yeah.
of what I learned and how I grew and who I met and the lifestyle I got to live and those sorts of things. And the dollars are just, I'm not going to remember probably
Yeah.
10 years from now
Yeah.
what that looked like. So,
I
you
love
know,
that. And you've even like doubled your client base from a couple months ago. And like in what you were just saying, like that wasn't even the important thing. It was your growth, your enjoyment, like, yeah, the business's growth and, um, yeah, being able to be happy with the things you got going for you rather than just like the constant, the carrots over there and just got to keep grinding and chasing it. Uh,
right.
and it's so funny how even even people will even know that that's the case. They're like, I know I'm chasing this arbitrary goal that's not going to be sasatisfying once I
Mhm.
hit it, but I don't know what else to do with myself.
Right.
So they
Right.
just keep playing that game.
Hmm.
And it
Yeah.
sounds
I
like you found
mean,
something else to do with yourself.
yeah, human beings are funny that way. Yeah. I think, it is one of those things you just don't realize starting a business. I at least didn't realize like we have never been given or taught or given the chance to exercise the skills that go with this level of autonomy, right? Um, and it's a really beautiful place to be in, but it can be really miserable. I remember Tim Ferriss has talked about that coming out of the 4 Hour Work Week. He did an episode like 10 years out. He's like, if I could go write it again, I would have had a whole section in there about what to do with yourself,
Mm,
right? Because he's had so many people who don't have to work 40-hour weeks anymore and they get depressed, they get
yeah.
miserable, right? And go kind of full existential crisis because what do I do with my life
Yeah.
when it's not full of work? Because that's what I know. And this
And
is scary.
and you've got everyone around you saying, hey, you've made it. You don't have to like work that much. Like you
Yeah, go sit on the
and
beach.
you're
It's
like,
like that's fun for
but I
two
don't feel
weeks,
any
but
different. What do you mean?
right. Yeah. And we're still dealing with all the things. And so it's kind of helpful to remember, like, okay, like learning these new skills takes time. It takes a lot of introspection and work, but it's such a cool experience to have the ability to start making these kinds of transformations toward I can enjoy my life as it
Yeah.
exists today, and I can find ways that my work can be meaningful that aren't as tied to the numbers or to the outcomes that I can't control.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Beautiful. And what about another theme that kind of emerged and became bigger as we went along? It was basically like you kind of showing up as you in your business. And, rather than the like, well, I need to be this, high energy entrepreneur type or this other thing. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, can you just talk about that of like how that changed and shifted?
Yeah. And that's kind of goes back a long, long time. I've always been an introvert, a little serious, a little earnest. I love having deep conversations about the nature of humanity and life. And I always, always envied and felt maybe lesser than in a lot of ways than people who are really vivacious, high energy, dynamic, charismatic, big vision, right? Like those folks. And entrepreneurs are often those folks, right? Because they're drawn to this space. There is a pretty significant, though less noisy, subset of entrepreneurs who are more like me, steady, organized, struggle sometimes to see the big vision, love to be in the weeds and the details. And it was actually really interesting watching how entrepreneurship has helped me in that area in general and our work in particular, to kind of notice like, okay, like what does it look like to recognize that the most valuable things that I bring to my clients are not being like them, but actually showing up with the energy that I have that can bring that kind of earthy steadiness to their big picture high energy world, right? Like they're
Yeah.
looking for something different than what they are, to help balance and steady things in their businesses. And um, kind of seeing that as something positive, something that I can embrace, something that I can lean into, um, and kind of openly acknowledge as part of our relationship. Like, hey, you probably aren't going to feel like super pepped up and motivated and like, right? Back to what we were talking about with the big, like wanting that kind of big result. That's not what we, that's not what we, I don't know what the word is, like how we make people feel. We make people feel calmed,
Yeah.
relieved, like, okay, like you got me, things are going to be okay. I feel like I know what I need to do. And that's a win, even if it doesn't look like them freaking out about how excited they are about what's going on, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, like kind of learning to recognize and embrace that has been a really important part. And putting my book out there was a good test subject of it. A lot of people loved it, found it valuable. Someone posted on Amazon, they're like, this is boring. And that has always been my trigger word, right?
Yeah.
Because I always thought of myself as boring.
Yeah.
And I found it still hurt, obviously, but I found myself being much more like, you know what, that's okay. Like it's
Nice.
not for
Yeah.
you. And that's
Yeah.
okay, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a beautiful thing of like your business being such a reflection of like you, right? Like
Mhm.
it's because the impact of working with you and that your business has is helping that like that grounded clarity, understanding the details, like the processes and like, okay, here's how we're actually gonna make a thing like come alive in the world. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, so like I mean, yeah, the alignment between what your business is doing and like kind of how you show up and who you are is just a beautiful thing. So like, yeah, you owning that and then showing up that way, it also it can even I'm just kind of realizing this now of like actually you showing up that other way can actually be a detriment to what your business is doing. Because if they're
Right.
like, hey, we're looking for kind of this like security, calm stability, and you're showing up as like the big ideas people, then it's like, well, this doesn't jive with like the promise and the
Right.
thing that I'm actually looking for.
Right.
Yeah, so it's yeah, so cool just you leading into like who you are, trusting like what you kind of just provide naturally and know your business can provide and seeing the value in that rather than just the value in people who are this other way, which is certainly valuable. It's also, yeah, that's just a really cool shift.
Thanks, Brian.
Cool. And then what about I've got let's see. Yeah, another one that was a kind of a bigger thing was, and this is what we talked about initially, the outreach and the I don't want to bother anybody. Can you talk a bit about
Mhm.
that?
Yeah. Yeah. one of the most helpful shifts, honestly, was kind of coming to an acceptance place of like, this is never going to be easy for me, right? Like, this is never going to be something that just is like, no problem. And it's not easy for anyone. Right. But yeah, I think I kind of had this idea in my mind that anytime I reached out to someone, I was annoying them. That was kind of the default state. And then I would be pleasantly surprised if they were like, wow, thanks so much for reaching out. It was great to hear from you. Right. So I kind of made that assumption, which made it very hard to do outreach at any amount of volume because of just kind of that emotional hit for every single time you're reaching out to someone and expecting them to be like, oh, why are you reaching out to me? You're so annoying. Right.
Yeah.
And not getting that response from anyone, didn't seem to really shift my mindset because it was just kind of so ingrained and unquestioned. So it's just really helpful to kind of look at that and be like, okay, is this a realistic way to think about this? Is this helpful for me or for them? Like just starting to kind of recognize like, you know what, for some people, you're gonna be like, man, I am so glad you reached out. Like, this is exactly what I need at the exact moment that I need it. Like, thank you so much. This is valuable to me. This is helpful to me. And starting to also kind of remember for myself the times that, there are a lot of things that I've bought thousands of things over the course of my life. We all have. And the amount of times where I am so glad that someone sold that to me, right?
Yeah.
I'm so glad that someone found me with the thing that I needed and sold it to me and it delivered on the promise that they had, right? Like, thank you for doing that. But I think we tend to think about sales in the super negative way that just makes it really hard to then go out and sell yourself. And so, now I don't get annoyed by ads. I don't get annoyed by door-to-door salesmen. I don't get annoyed by LinkedIn outreaches. Like, there are definitely times where I'm like, yeah, that pitch wasn't good. Not good. I don't feel obligated to respond to all of them because the volume is very high, right? Like all of those things.
Yeah.
But I recognize that like, I'm going to a Vance Joy concert on Sunday. If Vance Joy had never advertised his work, I would have never found it. And I would have a life without Vance Joy music in it, right? Like, I'm glad he advertised his work and told me there was a concert I could go to so I could buy the ticket to it, right? Like, there's just so many things that have been really helpful for me to start leaning into like, hey, I believe that what we do is helpful for the right people who need it. And selling that thing is going to involve interrupting people, right? I cannot wait for people to come to me and refuse to interrupt anyone ever. It's going to involve reaching out to them, sending them an email, sending them a message saying, hey, is this something that would serve you? Hey, we have this going on. Those sorts of things. And trying to just lean into like, yes, this is uncomfortable for me. It will always be uncomfortable for me. But changing my mindset around it has made it much less painful. We've moved from painful to uncomfortable. And I can accept that.
That's progress, baby. Nice. And then two other things I want to cover, because I know we touched on them in our coaching. Burnout and imposter syndrome. Have you noticed any shift in either of those from before we started working together to how things are going now?
Yeah. I feel like one of the things I'm still in the process of working on is setting up rhythms of things that I'm doing for only me, right?
Yeah.
As an entrepreneur and a mother of two young children, most of my life is working in one way or another. Because I'm waking up, I'm getting the kids up, I'm getting them running to school, I'm getting them to school, I'm getting their snacks, right? I'm handling all of that. I'm studying on my free time, like how to improve as a parent, how to think about things, how to show up in different areas of, I'm thinking about food and how to make sure it's, everything in their life. I am doing a lot of work to create a life for them. And a lot of my free time is going towards like, I'm going to improve in how I cook, family stuff still, right? Like my skill building.
Every time there's still some sort of growth. Must be.
It's still like, I'm going to do a garden for myself this year, but was it really for myself? Or was it like, I wanted to create an outdoor oasis for my family? Not bad. None of this is bad.
Yeah.
But none of it was like, for me, full stop. There is no additional benefit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so starting to think about that and kind of find areas where it's like, there's nothing else in this except helping me. Right. And so I've started, even just in small areas, through our work together, started doing the practice of logging, not just gratitude every day, which I was already doing, but also acknowledgements of what I have done. Not the outcomes, but what I have done. Like, hey, I showed up and I had that hard conversation, or hey, I recovered more quickly from that, or I did 20 outreaches and that was tough, but I did it. I showed up and I did it. And acknowledging and kind of celebrating myself. And that doesn't benefit anyone else but myself. And I have a pumped up playlist, like music that makes me feel ready and pumped up, and like taking breaks to do that. Still a long ways to go, but it's just been helpful to just, start thinking about like, hey, I'm a human being. I'm finite. I can build things into my life that are meant to be restorative to me. And that is enough that it's restorative to me. It doesn't need to have any other benefit.
Yeah. And just doing like, just getting that started is the biggest part, right? Like that's
Right.
so much more than like adding to it's easier, because just getting that started is overcoming that block of like, well, I can't just do a thing for myself now, can
Right.
I? Yeah. So what's with that shift of realizing you can do, like, it's okay to do things for yourself and just starting to, like, has that uh helped with like sustaining energy and avoiding burnout and that kind of stuff, or has it, like, too early to tell, or still like in the early stages of it?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I recover from overwhelm more quickly.
Mm.
And I'm trying to remember. I remember like kind of early in the summer while we were still working together, I was kind of working through that and flirting with the edge of burnout. And that's what's so funny, right? You don't notice your thumb unless it's hurting. And then sometimes you don't even notice that your thumb that was hurting stops hurting.
Yep.
I haven't felt that way in a while. Right.
Yep.
And so now kind of looking back, I'm like, man, when was the last time I felt like really genuinely burned out? It's been a minute.
Yeah.
Which is really good, because I think for a while there I was flirting with the edge of like getting myself sick, burned out, right? And not because I was working too much in terms of hours, but because of the mental weight, and the emotional weight of all the things that we've talked about. Like, it
That's,
wasn't about, oh,
yeah.
I've staying up till all hours or anything like that. I was staying within my constraints, but putting so much emotional freight on all of it that it drained me a lot faster than it needed to.
Yeah, so like going to the stuff we talked about before of the expectation of needing every client to think you're the greatest thing in the world. The I feel like we had other expectations that oh yeah, like gotta, triple the business. All these things, like that's kind of adding to the, yeah, like these expectations and all these things that you put on yourself are adding to the burnout. And then once those kind of dissolve and you switch the fear of, and now I got to do outreach and everyone's gonna hate me, like
Right.
you just get all this like emotional drama kind of calm
Right.
down,
Right.
and then the burnout, like you said, oh wait, I haven't felt this for months.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
that's
Where it's
really
like,
cool.
this feels more sustainable. Right.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like, because like you're doing kind of the same things, right?
Right.
You have
Mm-hmm.
twice as many clients now,
Right.
and you're not burned out.
Right. Exactly. Like the space has been filled with things that actually are helping the business grow. And they don't burn me out as quickly
Yeah, that's
because it's
awesome.
not.
So I think everyone thinks that the burnout comes from like the tasks, the to-do list, all these things. And it's like, well, it's
Mhm.
kind of your relationship to it, right? It's all
Right.
that mindset, the stress, pressure you put on yourself. You relieve that, and then the to-do list, like, well, it's just a freaking to-do list.
Right.
And you'll get
Right.
things done, and you'll not get some other things done, and it'll be fine.
Right. Right. Like, we're okay. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think I'm a systems person, right? So I had all the systems to keep my work within the container that it needed to fill in.
Yeah.
But that's why I knew I needed to then look at, okay, why is there so much stress around what's still in the bucket? And this is now a mindset issue, not a volume issue. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Um, Cool. And then imposter syndrome, was that a thing that was much of an issue? Did that get helped or worked on?
Yeah, I've been thinking about imposter syndrome recently. I heard a commencement speaker who used to, I think she wrote a book about it, who's now kind of talking more about how we've kind of put a label around something that's just kind of the human experience, right?
Yeah.
Of being new to something, which was kind of helpful of like, oh, okay, it's not that I'm doing something wrong, that I'm feeling this feeling that we label imposter syndrome. It's like part of the equation.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think it definitely still shows up very much right now in particular, because I'm looking forward to, okay, I need to start training people to do what I do, right? I've carved out these other roles in the business, but now we have the final frontier, what I do. Um, and learning how to lead someone else and lead a team where I'm out of client delivery. It's there. It's very much there.
Yeah.
Of like, can I lead like this? Can I be a good boss? Can I provide like the right mixture of guidance and freedom? Can I provide really good, like radical candor feedback, right? Can I do these things? And just feeling not ready because I've never done it before.
Yeah.
And entrepreneurship can feel really exhausting because you're always at the bleeding edge of your skills, really, right? Like if you're growing, like you're always doing something
Yeah.
you've never done
Yeah.
before. You're always facing something you've never faced before. And once you kind of get comfortable, you start doing a new thing, right? Like very few of us are like, I'm good now. I'm just going to coast.
Or then they end up like all Tim Ferriss's people that were depressed.
Yeah, exactly. Then you run into a new thing. Like, now what do I do with the rest of my life and feel like my life has meaning? Right. So you just are still like at the bleeding edge of something different. And so yeah, I don't know that we got to it much
Yeah.
yet. But I think it's been a helpful reframe to start thinking of it as like, yeah, of course I do. But it doesn't actually mean I'm not like
Yeah. Like
I'm not
again,
qualified to do this, or that another person who
you're
was qualified
supposed
wouldn't.
to.
Yeah,
It'd be
yeah, like
weird if you didn't have doubts around this thing you've never done before.
right.
Like,
Yeah. Cause it's
yeah.
like next year I'll have a $500,000 company. I've never had a $500,000 company before. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what that means. I don't know how to run one of those.
Yeah.
And it's not like in my sleep I'm going to figure that out. I'm going to figure it out by doing it.
Yep.
So I'm going to make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah. 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 Beautiful. Yeah, and I'm just imagining if you had that, like going for $500,000, still carrying the, and every client must think it's the absolute best. And I kind of hope that clients don't actually sign up with me because then I'm in their debt. Yeah.
Yeah, it's impossible. Like that would not work. You can't do that times 50 or 100. Yeah,
Yeah.
50. Just
Yeah.
can't.
Cool. So any other just like general summaries of kind of like how would you describe like life before coaching versus after?
Yeah, I mean, I think even doing coaching like this and investing in coaching like this was a great exercise in being willing to invest in myself,
Yeah.
right? Like
Spending an
it kind of,
hour every week talking about you.
I know an hour out of 20 is a significant chunk of time. Yeah, for no other reason than to like have you sit there and listen to me talk about myself. Like that was kind of uncomfortable in a lot of ways because the whole point of this was for me,
Yeah.
right? This was not making anyone any money. This was not benefiting anyone else other than like, the healthier that I am, the better mom I am, et cetera, et cetera. Right. Sure. But the
Blah
point
blah
was
blah. Me
like,
being
there still
better
is,
makes me better in all areas of my life. Whatever.
but you know what I mean? Like that, I wasn't there like, I need to become a better mother. So let's work on
Yeah.
this. So I become a better mother. It's like,
Yeah.
I was investing in myself. And
Yeah.
that was a weird experience to start being willing to do that. Like I'm putting money towards my own personal development and not in a way that's kind of directly tied immediately to like this revenue goal or something like that. Like they're related, they're interconnected and all those things, but that's not what a win's going to be measured by. And yeah, so I think even going through that process and having these moments of kind of facing things and being like, that's going on in my brain, and starting to kind of unwind those things, starting to think about differently. Like I'm so like linear and stuff that I'm trying to kind of think of like before and after in really linear terms, which is hard to do. But they're definitely, going into this year, I was really discouraged. pretty jaded. Like I'd mentioned, I had kind of been running really hard to kind of stay in the same place for the past several years. I had, the transition from 1 to 2 kids was really hard. And it was just, last year was a hard one. And so coming into this year, it was kind of at a spot of like, I'm in a hole I need to dig out of. And not being really sure I could believe that things would change in any meaningful way. Whereas I think the process that we went through, like I said, just made things feel lighter, feel more positive, feel more exciting, feel like we are in a much better place than we were before. I'm in a much better place than I was before. And I'm really excited about what's to come.
Yeah.
Right. So I think some of those, like we've talked about all these specific things where it's like, man, switching that, reframing that, adapting that, has just really helped make things feel possible and doable. Like I could keep doing this instead of like, man, I'm gonna flame out,
Yeah. Oh, so yeah, I mean, is it fair to say like maybe your day doesn't even look that different? Actually, it does, because you're not doing 1,000 coffee chats. So,
Yeah. Yes.
but like, yeah, you're still like working the same hours. You're still,
Mhm.
doing outreach. But it's like it seems like the energy is very different. Whereas before it was
Yeah.
like a slog and pressure and heaviness,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
now there's possibility. There's like enjoyment, lightness, and
Mhm.
and twice as many clients. So like, there's like a lot of the more tangible outcome, like things looking different, but it's very much like how you're going through the day
Right.
seems very different.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Just how the day feels is very different.
Beautiful. How
Yeah.
would you describe like when you finish your workday now, what does that look and feel like versus when you clocked out of work in April?
Hmm. Yeah. I think I found myself in the afternoons because I work in the morning when my kids are at school, kind of being like, I've got a little extra energy. Like, what do I want to do with this? And also, giving myself the space to have a break in the afternoon when my kids are down for quiet time has been great. Still not perfect
A
about that.
break
Doesn't
just
happen
for
all the
you
time.
where you're not learning and developing and growing?
Or cleaning or whatever. Yeah. I mean, I'm not perfect at it, but like it's something that's in my head now. Like, yeah, I can do that. Like, sure, I can
Awesome.
watch Netflix while my kids are taking a nap instead of cleaning the bathroom. It'll be okay. And I have the energy to then clean the bathroom later.
Yeah.
Um,
So you get both.
I have both.
That's beautiful.
So that's been really good. And um, yeah, things just feel generally more sustainable. Yeah.
Yeah, love that. Cool. Anything else you want to share?
I think we got it.
Okay.
This was a good like review for me. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always fun doing these.
Mhm.
Cool. Yeah, and you were awesome to work with, and like it was so
Thanks.
fun
Yeah.
because you kept like coming back and like seeing, like, you talked about some of the like journaling exercises we had you doing,
Mhm.
and like you often like come back and seeing differences and just like, or pushing yourself to show up more fully as yourself in these different areas, both in business and some other like family stuff that we didn't even get into, but that
Mhm.
was a fun little detour during the
Mhm.
coaching. And yeah, so thank you for being awesome. And where can people find you who want to get things out of their head and systemize their business and pull themselves out of their business more?
Yeah. Yeah. Our website's asquaredonline.com. And my playground is LinkedIn. Thankfully, Ashlee Berghoff spelled this way. There's only one of us. And so if you Google me, you'll find us. Yeah.
Sweet. Thank you, Ashley. And for more case studies, success stories like these, head over to mccarthymindsetcoaching.com. There's a bunch of them. Hop on the email list and you'll get more stories and all that cool stuff. Okay, bye.